Why I left the rave scene.
I'm a 27-year-old female in Arizona, and my time in the Phoenix and Tucson rave scene between 2005 and 2009 hosted some of the best and worst moments in my life. The worst of which was two separate occurrences involving what I believe to be the same person. The first incident was at a Valentine's Day themed party called Cupid's Revenge in February 2006. There was really good drum and bass, and me and my 4 friends got our hands on some really good pills. 3 hours of dancing, lights, and trippy music, and I was feeling amazing. Every person I bumped into was my new best friend. Then I bumped into this guy wearing a white dust mask with a cat's nose and whiskers drawn on it. He also had a white painter's hat on, covered in black light paint. I told him his outfit was really cool, and I asked him his name. He said, "Call me Felix," and handed me a dust mask with a puppy mouth and tongue drawn on it. Now, typically people on E will put Vicks Vapor Rub on their chest or on a dust mask because the vapor smells really good and almost enhances the high. I smelt the Vicks on the mask, and so I put it on. The Vicks gave me a rush, and I started dancing and got more immersed in the crowd. About a half hour later, I started tripping balls. I knew it wasn't the E. It was turning into more of an acid trip. I started freaking out. I was seeing monsters, and the music was turning into smells. Then I blacked out and woke up on the way home in my best friend's car. I asked her what happened, and she told me I was going nuts, kissing strangers, yelling nonsense at people, and I almost went home with the wrong group of people. She told me once I got into the car I started crying and confessing all this messed up stuff, including drunkenly kissing her boyfriend a year prior, and then passed out. It was a 4-hour drive home, by the way. Fast forward to July 2009. Me and a few friends, different ones, went to go see Diesel Boy at the Ice House in Phoenix. The venue was very cramped and hot, and I was just getting over a cold and was playing it sober that night. By then I was very seasoned in the scene and had a very strict set of rules on how to handle myself at parties. But that night, being the sober one, I took the role of just keeping an eye on my friends. A few hours later, after using the restroom, I was ready to go home and went to find my friends. I finally find one of them. We will call her Stacy. She had wandered off shortly after we got there, and when I found her, she was sitting on the ground with vomit all down her mouth and chest. Around her neck was a dust mask with a puppy dog's mouth and tongue drawn on it. She was completely incoherent. I had to pick her up and drag her around while I looked for my other 2 friends. Luckily, I found them pretty quickly, and once they saw the state Stacy was in, we got the hell out of there. I took her home with me and let her sleep on my couch. The next morning, she told me what happened. She told me that she got the mask and bought a pill off of a raver that called himself Sylvester, and that was wearing a dust mask with whiskers drawn on it. I asked her if he was wearing a painter's cap with black light paint all over it. She said yes. That was the last straw for me when it came to my party life. Between these 2 occurrences, I was arrested when a party was broken up, got left behind in the desert, and got several bad pills that made me sick. But this guy popping up again just made it all too much, and it was a big wake-up call for me. So I'm glad to say that I've calmed down. So Felix and or Sylvester will never meet again.
My neighbor's friend.
It was a pretty chill afternoon. I was home alone with my twin sisters and we were outside in the backyard playing our ukuleles. We lived in a huge subdivision at the time, and all the houses were literally an arm's length of each other. Well, a new family had moved into the house behind mine, which was right in front of my backyard. From my understanding, the father was an exterminator who owned his own company along with his friend, John. John was always at the family's house and they liked to chill in the backyard too, so seeing each other was inevitable. It was cool though because we felt safe. Big mistake. So when the family goes back inside, John lingers about and I can feel his eyes burning a fucking hole through my forehead. So I look up and there he is. He had moved from his chair to the edge of the fence that separates us. I ignore him and play even louder. My sister does the same. You girls are very pretty. I don't think I've ever seen twins so beautiful. I notice how his words are slurred. He must have had one too many beers. Look, the Hansons went to the park. You guys can come play with my penis if you like. We noped the fuck out and went inside and locked the doors. We watched as he drunkenly tried to jump the fence and stumble over to the back door. He starts banging on the back door, making the whole house shake. I'm going to fucking kill you and fuck your bodies at the same fucking time, you sluts. Is that what you want? A little Johnny fun time? I'm going to exterminate your pussies. This goes on for like 5 more minutes before some of the other neighbors call the cops. It was actually pretty funny now that I look back on it. But for two 12-year-olds, it was actually pretty frightening. So my neighbor's creepy friend, let's not meet.
Some random guy tried to steal my dog.
I live in New Jersey, in Rockaway. I lived in a townhouse and had many streets and neighbors. I am a girl and was 12 at the time. I was walking a foster dog who was a pit bull terrier mix. He was dog and people friendly, and his name was Shaka. Many people petted him, but one guy scared me. I was walking Shaka when this guy walked up to me and asked if he could pet him. I said yes. This guy looked 30 or 40. I wasn't really sure. He began asking more questions about the dog: breed, age, name, where I got him. I had and still have anxiety. I told him the shelter and explained we were fostering him. He asked if he could hold the leash. I said no, and the man seemed to get angry. Then he started asking me questions about me. How old are you? Where do you live? What's your name? I didn't want to be rude, so I told him my name. Not a smart answer. I have to go now. I was trying to get away from him. I will take your dog for you, then you can drop by my house and pick him up later. I said no and made an excuse to leave. Do you want to be my friend? He kept following me. I didn't want to go home, so he would know where I live. I told him I didn't need friends. I was getting scared and didn't really know what else to say. I don't have any friends. Then Shaka can be my friend. My dog seemed to know what was happening and got nervous. He is getting adopted by someone else. I have to go. I lied. I have a puppy. Would you like to see her? He probably didn't have a puppy. No, I am really busy. I have to go. I was hyperventilating and getting scared. He tried to grab the leash, but I pulled back. Your dog looks nice. I think I want to adopt him. He lunged towards me. I started running. I must have been in better shape than he was because I lost him and ended up on another street. Now I am even more paranoid. So to the guy who tried to take my dog, let's not meet again. Ever.
Internet girlfriend.
This is my first time posting here, but I have been following this subreddit for a while now. The year is 2003. I'm a 15-year-old boy and living in a small city. This is a place where everyone seems to know everyone. I am typically shy and often use the internet as a way to meet people. During this time, the instant messenger, ICQ, was still pretty popular amongst the teens in my area. I would often stay up late adding new people and chatting with them. I would do this by searching by city and adding people I knew from school. This is how I met her. Her name was Sarah. We began chatting innocently enough. The normal, hey, what's up, sort of deal. Now, Sarah was self-described 17-year-old girl. Short, brown hair, and nerdy. We hit it off pretty fast. We had so much in common I found it easy to open up to her. Although I thought it was strange that I had never seen her in school. I go to the Christian school, explaining why I had never seen her. We continue chatting for some time and I eventually give her my home phone number. We chat regularly over the phone until she eventually asks, "Would you like to hang out sometime?" Without hesitation, we make plans for me to go over to her house, hang out and watch movies. The day finally comes for us to hang out. I make my way across town to the address she gave me. It's a small apartment building. Slightly confused on how she and the rest of her family would fit into such a small apartment, I make my way up the stairs. I knock and am immediately greeted at the door by a woman, maybe in her late 20s or early 30s. I knew this was Sarah, but she didn't look anything like she described. I was instantly weirded out, but followed her into her small one-bedroom apartment. I stupidly asked, "So are your parents home?" She laughed. "No, it's just me here." I'm now sitting awkwardly on the couch. "Do you drink?" She's looking at me across the room. "Water," I joke. We both share an awkward laugh as she pours me a glass of wine. I never take a sip of it. She sits close to me after popping in a bootleg copy of Finding Nemo. My brother got this for me while it was still in theaters. He's like a hacker or something. She giggles. At this point, she's very close to me. I'm uncomfortable, and being the weirdo I am, I shift to the floor. I'm now sitting on the floor with my back up against the couch. She then straddles me from behind. "You look so tense." She begins rubbing my back. "I'm really good at this. I can make you feel so good." I lean forward. Thanks, but you don't need to do that. I'm fine. I explain that I should be going, and she points to her bedroom. You can stay the night. I've never had a guy stay in my bed. She keeps making sexual advances, telling me how she hasn't had sex in so long and she wants to meet a nice guy like me. All the while, she keeps touching my arms and face. Now, at this point in my life, I was still a virgin, but this lady was not going to be the one to change that. I talk my way out of the situation and head home. The next few days, I get several messages telling me that she misses me and she's sorry. Eventually, I cave and respond to one of her messages. I asked her why she lied and what her deal is. She tells me she has a hard time meeting friends and that she doesn't like people her own age. I feel bad, forgive her, and we make plans to talk in person. Here I am at my last encounter with Sarah. I ride my bike over to her apartment. Once inside, I am greeted not only by her, but her parents too. They introduce themselves. Finally, we get to meet Sarah's boyfriend. Her dad jokes, "We've heard so much about you. She's always going on and on about how great you are." Her mom follows up. In my head, I'm freaking out. I am not this girl's boyfriend. Sarah grabs my hand and laces our fingers. She looks so happy. Her parents are just stopping over to pick something up and were actually on their way out the door when I showed up. If I was going to get out of here, now would be the chance. I grabbed the box her mom was about to pick up. "I'll take that down for you." Her mom smiles. "You're a keeper." I help her parents load the box into their SUV and hop on my bike. I was just swinging by to say hi. I should probably get home. Sarah wraps her arms around me and kisses my cheek. I ride home confused and plan on never talking to that girl again. She dropped me a few messages I never responded to. She called the landline a few times, but we never spoke. I don't know whatever happened to her. I don't know why her parents didn't question my age, or if they were just okay with it.
Vicarious stalking.
This encounter happened in college. I was a resident advisor, and one of my residents came to me about her creepy ex-boyfriend. He also went to our school and had been harassing her. We had been trained as RAs on how to deal with some issues. I talked her through it and advised her to save all messages but not respond back. With her permission, I called the dean of students on call and the head of the dorm. It took some sorting out, but he ended up taking a leave of absence. The stalking was just the tip of the iceberg of some clear mental health issues. Things started looking up, but then one night my resident comes in the suite and says he has been texting her and that he's back and he's going to force his way into the dorm. We lock the doors and try to come up with a plan. Not long, someone bangs very hard on the door and keeps knocking. It was him. Without opening the door, I advised him I would call the cops if he didn't leave. He left. We weren't really sure if he actually left the building though. It's a huge dorm. Then my resident's phone starts getting calls from a number. It's the guy's mother. The mom is yelling at my resident and accusing her of a bunch of random and unfounded things. The mom won't stop calling, so we call A&T and ask them to block the number. This is before smartphones. A few of my residents' friends come over and take her back to her dorm room. They will stay with her. Seeing that everything is okay, I head out for the evening to hang out. But an hour or so later, my phone is blowing up with calls. It's the guy's mom. How did she get my number? She said I was to blame for her son getting a leave of absence and she knew where I lived. She threatened me a few times, and she said she was on campus. I hung up and kept ignoring the number. It was pretty late at this point, and I'm realizing I'm at an area of the campus that isn't very populated, and I'm freaking out. I decide it's better to get back to the dorm for my safety and check on my resident. When I get there, my resident is crying but appears safe. I ask what happened. Turns out the guy tried to hang himself that night in his old dorm room. He survived, but I never got the full story of how it went down. He got the help he needed after that, but the mom kept calling me every week for a while. I never answered, but I was terrified of what she might do to me. All for just being a good RA. A lot of creepy things happened when I was an RA.
You want my shoes? Why?
Creepy just seems to follow me. I had to run to the local corner store for milk and gas. It was in February and in Minnesota, and that's cold. I was wearing a heavy jacket, hat, and mittens, but in my rush, I just threw on my favorite slip-on Minnetonka moccasins. Leaving the store, a man approached me. This was a smaller sized town, so at first I wasn't afraid at all. Just thought he needed directions or something. I should have known immediately something was up because his first sentence was, "This is going to sound odd, but..." He proceeded to tell me that he was trying to play a prank on a friend. Yeah, sure. And wondered if I might sell him my shoes. I think I blinked twice as the reality of the situation sunk in. "You want my shoes?" Sorry, but no," I said as he stepped closer. He was between me and my car, so I attempted to step around him, and he stepped in front of my car and put his hand on the car handle and said, "Look, I just really need your shoes." I locked eyes with him and told him the first thing I was going to do was stab him in the eyes with my keys, and then I would scream as loud as I could if he didn't back away from the car. I took one step towards him. Probably not smart. He called me a selfish bastard and walked away. I cannot tell you how many times I've been asked how much he was willing to pay for my shoes. And before anyone here asks, I didn't let it get that far, and it would not have mattered. There was not a time when I went back to that store and didn't look around and worry that he would be there.
Somehow, the winter air seems warmer than your car.
This happened quite a few years ago when I was 11. Now when I look back, I'm kind of proud of the way I handled it. It was late at night and very cold in the dead of winter, and I was asked to pick up some groceries by my father at our local supermarket. It was in walking distance, and I, being an obedient child, did not refuse and set out with a goal. I, also being foolish, forgot to put a coat on, but continued shivering and walking, making my way down to the destination. I exhaled in relief at the rush of warm air when I stepped inside and quickly shuffled over to the corresponding shelves, because my items were there. Grabbing the stuff I needed, I paid and headed out once again into the merciless cold. It seemed much colder than when I went inside, but maybe that was because I had gotten used to the warmth. I continued walking when I felt an uncomfortable weight, the heaviness of a stare. I looked around but noticed nothing really out of place. Cars passing, flickering lampposts that God forbid the city fixes. Most of them are out and I didn't have a cell phone. And houses turning in for the night. So I huffed and continued walking my disgruntled self back to the house, the feeling never leaving. I was 2 streets away from my destination when I felt a hum of a car. That was a taxi. Pull up beside me. I looked over and the person rolled down their window, revealing a middle-aged man who seemed rather normal, but something felt uncomfortable about him. He smiled at me and called out, "Hey, miss, do you need a ride? It's rather cold." I shook my head. Kind offer or not, it didn't seem okay to me, so I replied, "No, thank you." His smile slowly slid off his face before he quickly fixed it. Then he tried again. "Are you sure? I wouldn't mind at all. It would be a pleasure." I'm not sure if it was my paranoia or not, but his voice held a very different tone at the word pleasure. I once again said no and continued to walk, while debating what to do. He followed me for a street asking if I was sure, and to let him give me a ride. I didn't want him to know where I lived, and I also wanted him to leave. So I pointed to a white house a few away from where we were located and told him, "Oh look, I'm already home. Thank you anyways." His face dropped out of his friendly facade and sped off down the road as I started jogging home. Even though he was gone, I still just wanted to be home. I never told anyone this till I was 14 and sitting with one of my friends telling stories. After I said this, she paused and looked at me and she told me how serious that was and how I could have been hurt or worse. So yes, taxi man, your car may be warm, and I'm not sure of your intentions, but I prefer the winter night.
No more shortcut.
This story took place about 15 years ago, back in the day when there were no iPhones, just iPods. In fact, this is the day and age where the iPod video was just released, and this was pretty revolutionary for a kid my age. It made school a hell of a lot more fun, and it also made walking a hell of a lot more fun. I used to walk back and forth to school, which was actually about a 3-mile walk. I know it seems pretty far for a kid, especially a preteen, but I lived alone with my father and he didn't have the time or schedule that matched with mine, so it was my only option. Most of the days when I'd walk home from school, I had no problems, but noticed that I was pretty oblivious to my surroundings, being so enthralled with my iPod. I used to take a shortcut that cut through some wetlands and took about 20 minutes off my walk. But this shortcut was also pretty secluded. There was no running road for cars to pass, just bikers and hikers. And technically, I'm pretty sure it wasn't legal to be walking there, seeing as it was marked private property. But it took such a good portion out of my walk, and I was so used to it and accustomed to the scenery that this was the route I took nearly every single day. One day I stayed after school to play basketball with some friends. This meant I was walking home at about 6 o'clock at night. By the time I get to the shortcut, it's about 7 o'clock at night. I guess I was walking slow, not paying attention or something. Anyway, I get to my shortcut and I get about halfway through the shortcut in the middle of nowhere, about a half mile from the entrance to my neighborhood and a half mile from the entrance to the shortcut. It's just getting dark and I'm starting to get a little creeped out and paranoid, but I just continue walking. At this point, I'm turning my iPod down little by little, trying to pay more attention to my surroundings. And that's when I hear something. It was clearly a whistle, a human whistle. Think the sound someone makes to call their dog. It came from behind me. I kind of freaked out, but didn't let it bother me too much and just kept walking at the same pace. About 5 seconds later, I heard a similar whistle come from a completely different direction. This really creeped me out and I picked up the pace. As I started walking faster, I decided to put my iPod on pause, but to pretend like it was still playing and continue my air drumming. At this point, I could hear footsteps in the surrounding area. There was definitely somebody nearby, if not multiple people. Again, like I said, this is private property, so it's either the owner, which I'd be trespassing if caught, or it's somebody doing something that I don't want to see. At this point, I'm about a quarter mile from the entrance to my neighborhood. It's just dark enough to not be able to see further than about 200 yards in any distance. Also, you have to keep in mind that the wetlands that I walk through are heavily bushed. At this point, I decide I better just run. And the burst of adrenaline really got me going, to be honest. I don't think I've ever ran that fast in my life. As I'm running, I could hear the footsteps behind me picking up. And then, from my peripheral, I could see someone from the left side running towards me. He was much older than I was, probably mid-20s, but back then he seemed like he was 40. And he was also much faster than me. If it wasn't for the fact that he was using the 200-yard distance to stay hidden, there's no way I would have made it out. As soon as I got to my neighborhood's entrance, I just started screaming. I did this because I know most of my neighbors, and if any of them heard me, they would come to help. I screamed from the entrance of my neighborhood, 3 streets down, all the way to my house. As I approached my house, my dad came running out and asked me what happened, and at first he seemed kind of mad at me. After I told him what had happened, he jumped in his truck and told me to jump in with him. We got in and I took him to the place where I'd last seen the guys. We stayed parked there for about 5 minutes, my dad just staring down the wetland path. We never ended up seeing them again, but about 2 months later, a biker was attacked in the same area. He was assaulted and robbed by multiple men. This biker was a 40-year-old man of good build. Mind you, he was out biking. And this made me cringe at the thought, what would have happened if it were me? After that, they put up a huge fence with barbed wire blockading my shortcut to stop trespassers, presumably because of the incident. But needless to say, I never took the shortcut home anyway, and wasn't planning to. So to the 2 or 3 people that ruined my shortcut, thanks a lot, and let's not meet.
I think you need to call the police.
Hi there, long-time lurker, first-time poster. I love this thread. This happened a little less than 10 years ago. My friends and I went to the beach for the day, having a great time. All of a sudden, I get a picture message from my sister of about 10 cop cars in front of my parents' house. Of course, I am shitting a brick, and to top it all off, my phone dies. Luckily, I was with my friends and quickly called my sister from one of their phones. My parents live in a very nice neighborhood. There is never any crime. On this day, my sister was out babysitting and my mom was expecting her to be home any minute. The outside garage door was open, as it was most days. So my mom is in the kitchen doing whatever. She hears the door open and the alarm beeps. The alarm beeps anytime a door opens in the house. She continued cooking for a few seconds and then realized my sister never came in to say hi. The garage door is right next to the kitchen, and across a little hallway is a TV room. So she goes to look in the TV room for my sister, and she sees a man standing in the room. I don't know how my mother had any courage to talk to the man because I would have been running away. She told him, "I think you need to leave." He responded, "I think you need to call the police." At this point, of course, she is losing her shit. She begins backing away from the room to the opposite side of the house, to where my dad's office is. Thankfully, he works from home. The best part is, he was on a phone call and was shooing her away, and she frantically tried to tell them there was an intruder. So they call the cops. My mom leaves the house and goes to stand on our neighbor's lawn. My father stays in the house, in his office. The door to his office is glass, so he can basically see across the house. There's also a door leaving the house, so if the guy was coming towards him, he could easily run out. The cops come and check the whole house. They tell my dad that he doesn't appear to be anywhere. My dad says that cannot be because he has been inside the house the whole time, and no door has beeped, indicating that the guy had exited. My mom was also outside and said that there is no way he left without her seeing. My parents were adamant that the guy was still in the house, so the cops checked again, and they found him. If you walk into my parents' bedroom, it's a big rectangle. You can easily sweep the room and clear it, but you have to walk in to the right to see that there is a tiny hallway with closets on either side that leads to their bathroom. The man had locked himself in the bathroom and the cops had to kick down the door. I don't know what's worse, that the cops could have easily left him inside our house, or thinking about how the guy had walked all around our house and deep enough into my parents' bedroom to find where the bathroom was. Turns out that the guy did have some sort of mental issue, and we think he was just trying to find a way to get help when he told my mom that she should call the cops. But man who waltzed into my parents' house, let's not meet.
Creek Man.
I can remember this like it was yesterday, and it happened when I was about 9. 27 now, and female, if that matters. I haven't told too many people about this. Don't think I ever even told my mom. My friends and I all loved to play in the nearby park, which a creek ran through and was surrounded by dense woods. Our parents all agreed that we were to not go to the park without a chaperone, and we saw this as a loose suggestion. One day I was staying at my friend Kelly's house, and her older cousin was babysitting us while her mom ran some errands. We knew that we weren't supposed to go to the park alone, but convinced Kelly's cousin to let us go. She was too busy chatting on AOL Instant Messenger to care. We made our way through the neighborhood and to the park entrance, running and laughing the entire way. We ran down the trail picking up big sticks as we were pretending that they were swords. Thank God for this. Suddenly, Kelly decided to veer off trail and head towards the creek, and I followed. It was a hot day, so we wanted to wade in the creek and walk across the log connecting the two sides. The sides of the creek were made up of thick clay and rocks, and it could be hard to maneuver depending on footwear choice. We were both wearing sandals and took them off. We used our sticks to help maneuver our way through the water and the mud, carefully watching our steps so we didn't fall in. I was looking down in the water, watching my step, when suddenly we heard a deep voice come from across the bank. "Hello, little girls," Kelly screamed. I looked up and screamed immediately when I realized there was a man standing across the creek bank watching us. He had his shorts around his ankles and was touching himself while staring at us. He had a thick, dark mustache and sunglasses on. My reaction was to throw my walking stick in his direction, hoping to scare him off. This didn't work, and he continued. We tried to run, but we were struggling to get up the creek bank while barefoot. We finally made it through the woods and out to the street without stopping until we reached Kelly's street. We were quite shaken up and convinced ourselves that this happened because we went to the park alone. We decided not to tell anyone what happened because we feared that we would get into trouble and not be able to go to the park anymore. My now 27-year-old self is pissed that we did this and wish we had told somebody. Who knows how many times that mustached man could have done that, or worse, and gotten away with it, and probably continued to do so. So, mustached park masturbator, let's not meet.
Who came in our house?
When I was 14, I had a paper route, and occasionally I would have to deliver newspapers to people who did not subscribe to the newspaper. One evening in the summer, I went to deliver the extra newspapers, and my mom wanted to come with. My route would be just a few blocks, so we rode our bikes, and the whole trip lasted maybe 10 to 15 minutes max. This is back when people weren't too worried about locking their doors. I remember we left our garage door open, which was really dumb. When we got back, I came in the door and saw our sliding door was open a little bit, which was not uncommon. However, our dog was barking like crazy. My mom walks down the hall and comes back with a panicked look on her face. She very seriously asked if I had been in her room. I tell her no. She tells me to go in my room and lock the door. Someone had been in the house. I lock my door and grab the phone in case I hear something. I look out my bedroom window, which faces the backyard, and see my mom looking around. She comes back in and tells me to come in her room. On the floor, all of my dad's guns were laid out. They were usually in gun cases, but they were all out of the cases and laying in a row. He had about 5 guns. The guns were always hidden in the back of his closet. We were scared. My mom called my dad to come home from work, but I don't know why she didn't call the cops. My dad looked around and of course found nobody and nothing was taken. My mom's purse was out on the kitchen table and had not been taken. My dad had not told anyone about his guns being hidden in the closet. How did someone know that we had left? We had one creepy neighbor next door, which we really didn't suspect at the time. I'm just glad we did not walk in before they left. There must have been more than one person because my mom's room was all the way in the back of the house. A second person must have been looking out the window and saw us coming back. That many years ago, and we still talk about how scary that was.
Find my iPhone.
Backstory. So, me and my mom live in a small home since it is just the two of us, and we live in an okay part of Longview, where there is little crime but bad worn down homes. There is also this empty field that got burned down some years ago by some mentally unstable people. Story. So this is about 5 months back. At about 11:30 at night, we get this knock at the door. Mind you, my mom is fast asleep, but even the slightest sound could wake her up. So my mom wakes up, and before she opens the door, she asks who it was. And it was supposedly a teen girl who had lost her iPhone earlier that day. And like all parents, she said her parents would be furious. So she is close to tears, and the girl says that her iPhone is in our house. But here's where it gets creepy. In the distance, I could hear a guy whispering, "Have you got them yet?" And she says, "Almost." So at this point, me and my mom were getting very scared. And we tell her that her iPhone is not here, and that if we find it, we will contact the police. So finally, after about 13 minutes of persuading her to leave, we just nope the fuck out of there and go into my mom's room. Side note, when she said she lost her iPhone, she showed us through the window of the door, and she had an Android, Samsung Galaxy S4, I believe. And that freaked us out too, because it had to have been a screenshot of some random person's house who had their iPhone like their own house and screenshot it saying it was our house. Let's just say me and my mom did not sleep easy that night. So, teen girl who had the missing iPhone, let's not ever meet again.
Not having to pump your own gas is a great thing.
I'm more pissed off than creeped out about this situation. It just happened about an hour ago. I'm visiting LA with my best friend. The rental was running on empty, so I stopped at the first gas station to fill it up. I'm from New Jersey, and as you may or may not know, an attendant fills our gas for us. With that being said, I do know how to fill my own gas tank. I pull up to the gas station, and first thing me and my friend see is a dark, scruffy looking man. I decided to wait until he leaves to get out of my car. And did he leave? Nope. Instead, he walks halfway towards my car, so he's about 10 feet away from us, and starts talking to me. I'm yelling through my window, "What the fuck do you want? Leave me alone." My friend starts freaking out, and at this point I'm wondering if he works there because he keeps pointing to my gas tank. He walks all the way to the window. My friend is starting to have a panic attack and continues talking and signaling. He wanted to get into my back seat. I responded, why? And he goes, "Because you're beautiful and I want to ride with you." He continues trying to get in my back seat as I'm yelling at him to get the fuck away from us. Then he starts asking for my number, and I politely tell him he can't have it. He reaches for his pants, and I honestly thought he was either going to 1, pull out a gun, or 2, pull out his junk. Eventually, he backed off, but I was too scared to get out of my car and drove off to the next closest gas station. So, creepy guy at the gas station, thank you for making me appreciate living in New Jersey, where I don't have to exit my car and deal with freaks like you.
I'm never going camping again.
Hi, first time posting, but this is something I feel like I must share. Well, let me give you some background information. I'm 18 and living in Dagenham. It's quite a busy area, so there is normally a lot of people around. This particular night, me and my friend, I'll call him Jim, we're on our way to camp out at a local park. You were never allowed in there past 10 p.m., so we would have to hide from the park police. The park we were staying at was always busy up until 9 p.m. Then it turns into a ghost field. Anyway, to the story. We had set out for the park about 8:30, so by the time that we got there wouldn't be anyone to grass us up. We arrived and everything went according to plan. We had the tent, snacks, portable DVD player, Pokemon Go at the ready. It was perfect. 10 p.m. came and we heard the park police shutting up the gates. They're quite loud, so it's always easy to hear the gates creak. Once we were sure the police left, we decided to whip out our phones and play some Pokemon Go. There was a Pokestop in the park, and I had a lure module to use. We had been playing for about half an hour when we heard a loud bang come from the gate, like someone had ran into it. Dagenham's known for its drunks, so we shook it off as nothing. Cut the long story short, we went back to the tent and watched a couple action films and went to sleep. Not even an hour into sleep, and I woke up with a horrible sense of dread, like someone was watching me. All of my senses were heightened. Something wasn't right. I hear some crunching coming from behind the tent. I thought it must have been a fox until I heard it, or should I say them, speak. I managed to make out the words. "They're gonna hear us. Keep your damn mouth shut." I quietly but violently shook Jim to wake up and told him what I'd heard. I needed to make sure I wasn't crazy, so I made him listen. While listening, his face turned white. The fear spread across his face. He grabbed my arm hard and whispered, "We need to make a run for it. Just trust me." I didn't hesitate. We're quite athletic people, so running isn't a problem. We slowly unzipped the tent, and with one big breath, made a mad dash for the gate. We heard pounding footsteps and heavy breathing behind us as a guy shouted in a horribly musky voice, "Boy, slow down. We just want to play with you." And both the guys started laughing madly. Like, seriously. It was some fucked up laugh. We made it to the fence and leapt over it with ease. The rest was just a mad dash back to my house, which was only around the corner. We made it back, slammed the door, and ran up to my room and peeked out the bedroom window. We saw both guys sprint past my house, both holding something metallic. It was hard to see, as it was pitch black due to the street lamp being out. Go figure. At that moment, I turned to Jim and asked why he looked so terrified back in the tent. He then went on to explain what he'd heard the guys say. You grab the small one, the large one's mine. The bigger they are, the bigger the challenge. That terrified me. We went back to the tent the next morning and found all of our stuff destroyed. The tent was slashed, portable DVD player was snapped in half, and all of our food was thrown all over the place. We never told anyone. I think we were too proud to say we ran away. All I know is I'm never going camping again. Thanks for reading, guys. See ya.
Redneck pedophile almost molested me and my cousins.
When I was 10, I was almost kidnapped. I lived in a great town. Crime was rare and everybody got along. So my parents had always been okay with me going a couple miles away from the house. I have a large family and usually my cousins were with me, so that just reinforced the whole safe idea. But that all changed on that day. My cousins Mikey and Lily were over at the time. I was 10. I'm a boy, by the way. Mikey was 8, and Lily was 6. We told our parents we were going fishing at the creek that was 1.5 miles down the road, and we took the dog with us. It was a pretty hot day, so we wore our bathing suits down. After doing the routine snake check, we started swimming and fishing and just having a great time. Until that truck came. It was a red truck, pretty beaten down, but that was normal for our town with all the farmers and such. It stopped right in front of us, so we got out of the creek to see what this guy wanted. As soon as he rolled down the window, I got a bad feeling. His hair was greasy and black, and he smelled like he hadn't taken a shower for quite a long time. He was a big guy, wearing a dirty white tank top. I couldn't see his pants. He just stared at us for a minute, like he was sizing us up. He kept his eyes on Lily for an uncomfortably long time. I'm not gonna lie, Lily was pretty good looking for a 6-year-old. Blonde hair, blue eyes, pretty tall for her age. But that didn't give that guy any excuse for staring at her like he was some sort of starving animal who had just found his next meal. Are you just going to stare at us or what? Mikey said, breaking the silence. I could tell he was annoyed because we were probably missing a bite, but that man didn't care. That's a pretty good looking girl you got there, he said. He said it as if she were a prize, some sort of thing to be proud of. I'd give anything to have me a girl like that. Well, she's my sister, so back off, Mikey said, stepping in front of her. Mikey wasn't usually super protective of her, but he was starting to tell something was wrong. We started to head back to the water when the fucking creep said, "You kids want to come to my house and see my pony?" Lily had a little bit of a horse obsession, so she was sold. This guy was fine to her. But Mikey and I were certain this guy was going to do something to us. Something bad. Come on, Lily. Let's start heading back. We can just swim in the pool, I said. I was hoping my voice didn't sound as scared as I was. We headed back down to the water, got our poles and the dog, and headed back to the road. The guy had watched us the whole time. Lily was upset about the pony, but we convinced her swimming was just as fun. But as soon as we started to head back towards my house, back towards safety, the guy turned around. He was right behind us now. "Hey, Lily," he called out. "If you come to my house, I'll let you ride my pony. She's really cute." It scared me that the guy called her by her name for some reason, but Lily didn't catch on. "No, we're going swimming now," she said. She had apparently lost all interest in the pony, so the guy just decided to get closer to us. I'm not kidding when I say he was probably 3 or 4 yards behind us. We moved to the side, and so did he. That's when we started panicking. I whispered to Lily to pretend like she saw something cool in the woods. She was confused why me and Mikey were suddenly so eager to get off the road, but she went along with it. "Hey, look, a bunny," she said, pointing into the woods. "Oh, let's go catch it," I said with feigned enthusiasm. We started heading into the woods when the creep called out again. "You kids are gonna need some help with that rabbit. I'll be right out." This guy had just invited himself into our imaginary bunny hunt to get away from him. I knew now that we could be killed. We were still more than a mile away from home, and none of us could run faster than his truck. "No, no thank you," we said, backing slowly into the woods. The dog was growling now. Obviously, she sensed something was wrong. "I won't take no for an answer," said the guy. And as he hopped out the truck, I could see what he was wearing for pants. Nothing. The man had nothing but a tank top. No underwear, no socks, nothing. Lily now understood why we had been so afraid of this man. She screamed, and I picked her up and ran. The guy ran too. The guy was pretty slow, but carrying Lily slowed me way down. Remember, I was 10, and I was very underweight, and I knew I couldn't do this for very much longer. So I put Lily down and climbed up a tree, pulling her right up after me. I screamed at Mikey to get the adults, and he took the dog and ran. I helped Lily into the tree, higher and higher, until we couldn't climb anymore. The guy waited under the tree the whole time, yelling how he was going to get us down and how he was going to take us home, and how we were going to ride his fucking pony. Lily knew there was no pony now, so we screamed and cried for a good 15 minutes. The guy tried to climb the tree a couple times, but he was too fat, I guess. It hurt his bare skin too much. Eventually, he heard our parents yelling, and he booked it into his truck. We heard it speed away, and a minute later our parents were there, and we were screaming and crying about the naked man with the pony. I wasn't allowed outside alone for a long time after that. I didn't want to be alone outside after that. It fucking terrified me that a man tried to kidnap/rape us only 2 miles from my home. Even 4 years after that, I still made my parents or older family come outside with me. I was fucking terrified. I never saw that man again. Our parents filed a police report, but they never found him. Probably came to our area just to pick out a few victims. Glad he didn't ever get any. So, scary, pantless pedophile, let's not ever meet again.
From the safety of my own bedroom.
This happened a bit over a week ago, and I felt like the first bigger shock and paranoia has settled a little, so I wanted to share what happened with me. I will begin my story time with a little explanation about how my apartment building is designed, as that information is quite essential to understanding the story. I have included 3 pictures to help explaining. If it matters, anyhow, I am female, 21. So, I live in a medium-sized town, nearby the center area, but still in somewhat quiet neighborhood. My building basically has elders and family people living here, but hence the location. The main doors are always locked, so you either need to have a key or have someone buzz you in order to get inside the building. Once you enter the building, there's obviously the staircase. Well, at each mid-floor, there are these small balconies. I don't really understand why though, as each apartment has its own balcony too. But sometimes people clean their carpets out there, etc. I live on the 3rd floor and you can see directly into my bedroom from the balcony, which is located on the 2nd and half floor. Here are the pictures to clear up any confusion. I will explain one more thing before beginning with the juicy stuff itself. My building is also located behind a big school building, so I don't usually close my curtains as there's nothing but a big empty parking lot in front of the building at night. A lot of people wouldn't be wandering around it anyway. Now let's get to the actual experience. It was the night between Wednesday and Thursday, and I didn't have work the next day, so I was just spending some quality time, aka watching YouTube from my tablet. I hear some noise coming from the hallway, kind of heavy footsteps and the sound of someone occasionally bumping into the handrail, as if drunk or just tired. But that's nothing very unusual, as I live in a building with other people living in it, so you do hear some noise even at night. The part where it gets weird is when I hear the footsteps end on my floor. My bedroom wall and the side of my bed where my head is located against the wall where the staircase is on the other side of. So it was clear that the person had stopped. I don't hear any doors opening nor footsteps anymore, just silence. I found it kind of disturbing that someone was just standing in the hallway in the middle of the night. After a while of silence, I hear the footsteps again, but this time more quiet and gentle, starting to walk back down the stairs. I just thought maybe someone was drunk and entered the wrong staircase or something. Not a big deal. They're gone now. I continued my YouTube marathon for a while before getting kind of sleepy. One thing I enjoy before going to bed is looking out of my window. There's one main road located at the end of the big parking lot, so sometimes I just watch cars passing by before going to sleep. So I put on some music with quiet volume, apartment buildings, and began my staring session. During the second song, I suddenly noticed a small source of light and some movement in the down left corner of my eyes. I lowered my gaze and just froze. There was a man on the small balcony staring at me for who knows how long, in my bedroom, in just my t-shirt and underwear. After what felt like at least a few minutes of being frozen in shock, probably was more like 5 seconds, I quickly closed the blinds and went to check that both of my apartment doors were properly closed and locked. Luckily, they were. After a while of shivering in my bed, I came to the realization that the man staring at me was most likely the source of the footsteps. He perhaps had heard the sound of someone being awake in my apartment and listened to that for a while, then noticed the balcony and decided to check it out, and noticed that you could see into the windows from there. I'm not completely sure, but I think he could have possibly seen me before I even went to look outside from the window, as I had a small light on in my room, and it was relatively dark outside, and I had no curtains on. If he didn't see me before, though, he for sure as hell did while I was staring out the window. At that point, feeling the discomfort of being creeped out, without knowing, my thought process was stopped by the sound of someone trying to open my door. Luckily, my door is quite secure, so I didn't think the person could get it open. But then I heard the small letterbox being opened as slowly and quietly as possible. I still feel the hair in the back of my neck standing up while typing this out. I have 2 doors, thank God, so he couldn't see directly into my apartment. But I could hear him. He was just breathing sort of heavy, constantly swallowing as if he was either very nervous or just somehow disturbed. Creeping on people? Disturbed? No way. I think I held my breath and changed into a motionless wax figure until he closed the letterbox and for some reason sprinted down the stairs, making a whole lot of noise again this time. I was so fixated on each sound, so I heard the sound of the hallway door being opened, and I assumed he ran out. I didn't dare to look out the window to check, as I was still feeling watched. Nothing more happened that night, but I was certain of getting no sleep for the rest of the night. I called up my mom and explained what happened. She had work the next day, so I didn't want to disturb her sleep more by asking her to come sleep here or to pick me up. So we just agreed that we'd keep the phone line open through Viber throughout the night. I drank 2 energy drinks. Not such a great idea when your pulse rate is already sky high, and stayed up until it was light outside and normal people were awake. I fell asleep unwillingly. I didn't see the man anymore, at least up until this very moment as I'm typing this, and hope to never see him again. But what did happen, and has made me even more paranoid, is this. The next time I had work after the incident was on Monday morning. I hadn't really been sleeping well lately and had an early morning. I was already somewhat all over the place, but this just scarred me for life. As I explained before, I have 2 doors in my apartment. Well, I was leaving for work and opened the inner one, and for my damn surprise, I saw the outer door slightly cracked open. I felt like throwing up and just running into my mom's arms like a little girl, just to go somewhere safe. But instead I had to go to work. The rest of the day I kept looking over my shoulder, constantly having this weird feeling that someone will come to get me. Like someone was watching me, etc. Just not a good state of mind. I hadn't heard anything at night, so I'm assuming I was just exhausted from not sleeping properly. I am so thankful for having 2 doors, because however he managed to ever so quietly open the outer door, he could have entered the apartment where I was basically passed out and done anything to me. I reported these 2 incidents to the building's management, and together we filed a police report. They promised to have someone guard the premises a while, until the situation settles down. I am sleeping still at my mother's house and hoping that once I return home, I'll be safe and one day be able to get rid of the paranoia. I will not be keeping my curtains open, nor checking out the window at night for a while. Thank you for reading. I had to get this out. Also, English is not my first language, so bear with me if there are some mistakes which might bother the reading experience.
From the safety of my own bedroom. Update.
I previously had submitted my experience with a creep who was watching me through my bedroom window, and all sorts of fun stuff. Well, now, I had already managed to rid myself of the horrible paranoia I had for the few months after the incident, until this just happened. This happened today, just about an hour ago, so I apologize as if my writing might not be the easiest to read. I'm still shaken. For a few days, my letterbox, the kind that is attached to an apartment door, had been opened and then just gently closed. I didn't think much of this as I had just been on holiday and attached a "no advertisements, thank you" sign above it, so my apartment wouldn't be filled with ads when I get back. And I hadn't taken it off yet. So I figured someone in a hurry to get their job done almost put the advertisements in my letterbox, then read the sign and, instead of dropping the ads, just closed the letterbox. So today I had come home from a busy day at work and went almost straight to the shower. My apartment is designed so that the bathroom door and the apartment door are literally a few steps from each other. While I was in the shower, I heard my letterbox open and then close again. I thought this was getting weird already, because if it had been the same ad guy, he would probably somehow notice the "no ads" sign by now. Or if it was a different person every time, then they wouldn't all be so blind, right? Slightly annoyed, but I continued with my shower. After I was done, I went to check if there was anything dropped off this time, and I found a note written on a receipt. It said, in my language, "I still think of you." Shivers. Fucking shivers. I couldn't do anything but stare at it for a while and think whether all the times the letterbox was opened was it this person who had left the note? And is this the same guy who had already once offended my home privacy? If it is, how long have they been watching me again? What do they want? Is it just some funny joke for them, or is this serious? And why me? Tomorrow I'll go to the police office again and ask if they can do anything. I'm terrified at the moment. I've closed all my curtains and I'm listening to every damn sound this building makes. I'm really starting to feel like I'll have to spend my savings in order to move the hell out. Edit. I went to the local police station and they promised to have a closer look if they can do anything with the help of this receipt. At first, the person that I spoke with was so arrogant though, suspecting maybe that it was just a prank by some of my friends, or a secret admirer, and just basically laughed it off. Luckily, she changed her attitude once I got to tell her that my apartment manager and I had informed the police about the previous event too.
Drainage ditch chase.
When I was 14 years old, it's been almost 10 years, we lived in a small neighborhood with a large field behind our house that stretched for several acres. To the right of our house, behind a couple streets of small houses, there was a water drainage ditch. It was concrete and about 6 feet deep, with walls that were on a steep incline, and about a mile long. One end of the ditch ran into a waterfall in which water fell 5 feet down into a creek below. The other ending of the drainage ditch held an opening into an underground tunnel. The tunnel was a little over 3 miles long and opened up near the highway. The opening has since been chained off, but as a kid, I often went down into the tunnel to mess around with friends and walk from one end to the other in pitch black darkness. One summer day, I was feeling bored in my house and tired of watching reruns on MTV, so I decided to go for a walk and head down to the tunnel. I called my friend to ask to see if she was interested in joining me, but she was busy doing something. I decided to go alone and started my walk to the tunnel end of the ditch. When I was 10 feet from the edge of the ditch wall, I could hear voices. As I stepped closer, I could see down into the ditch, and there was a Jeep Wrangler parked down by the tunnel entrance, and 4 guys in their 20s, if I had to guess. Not wanting to talk to anyone, I stayed at the edge of the ditch and watched them disappear into the tunnel before turning to walk down to the waterfall end. I had been sitting at the edge watching the few small fish that lived in the creek swim around for almost an hour before I heard the sound of an engine being started. I figured the Jeep guys must be finished at the tunnel, and I got up to get a better view down the ditch. I guess my standing up at the other end caught their attention, because instead of just driving up and out of the ditch, the Jeep turned and started heading towards me. I had a weird feeling about the car's change in direction and decided to go home, rather than walk back towards the tunnel end of the ditch that was near my house that would have forced me to pass them. I turned into the field and started walking across to my backyard. Due to the length of the ditch and the direction it ran, the walk was about 1.5 miles. Less than 50 feet into my walk, I could see the Jeep come tearing down the end of the ditch and turn up towards the field. With a sinking feeling, I knew they were coming for me. I started to run as fast as I could. The field was uneven and hard to navigate at a quick pace. It was taking all of my concentration to run straight without falling, and when the Jeep swerved in front of me, I screamed. I could hear the guys laughing and jeering at me. Half a mile in, the Jeep had cut in front of me several times but never stopped. They seemed to be purposefully driving in circles just to terrify me so they could get a good laugh. I was getting tired as I got a couple 100 feet away from my house, and I've never been as thankful to see my father as I had been that day. He must have heard my scream and seen what was happening by chance on a smoke break and had gone to retrieve his rifle. Standing on the porch, he yelled at me to get my ass into the house and pointed the gun at the Jeep. I could hear them slam on the brakes and come to an abrupt stop behind me. When I chanced to look behind me, I could see them speed off back towards the ditch, yelling about my dad being a psycho with a gun. By the time I got through the door, he had propped up the rifle in the corner of the living room and pulled me into a tight hug. From that day, I wasn't allowed to go back to the tunnel, and I lost the desire to see that place again. I'm not sure if their sole intent was to mess with my head and upset me for a laugh, or anything more sinister. But either way, creepy guys in the Jeep Wrangler, let's not meet.
Creepy man in the shadows.
So about 3 months ago, my dad and I were in Puerto Plata. We were staying at the Ibero Star, and when we got there, we realized we were right near the end of the strip of resorts. We were told not to walk the beach too far because at a certain point, it was the locals area, and you were no longer on resort property. Therefore, they couldn't offer as much protection. Everyone we met was very nice, met lots of locals, and had no problems. Our room was at the end of the resort by the beach, a great room. On the first night, we went for a walk on the beach around 11 p.m. and saw lots of crabs. Me, loving animals, wanted to get some pictures of them, but it started raining, so we went back to the room and to bed. The next night we walked the beach around 11:30. I wouldn't do this if I was not with my dad. So we walked around for about a half hour, and I got some pictures, and we were walking back to our room. Right before our room, there was a large area covered with palm trees in the sand. I was looking down at the camera, reviewing my pictures, when my dad said, "Did you see that?" I said, "No, what?" He said, "There was a guy hiding right there. Look behind you." I looked behind me and saw a tall, skinny man hiding beside the palm tree, keeping his body hidden beside it in the shadows. His hood covered his head, so I couldn't tell if he was white or brown or what. He had something shiny in his hand that was reflecting some light from somewhere. We went back to the room and watched as he stood there for almost a half hour. Then we called hotel security. All they really said was, "You're not supposed to walk on the beach at night," and they said they would send someone to look. We didn't look out at him anymore because we didn't want him to see us, since our balcony was on the ground floor, and he could have come right up to the room. Still, wondering what would have happened if I was alone. So creepy. Let's not meet. Creepy man in the shadows.